Okay, so welcome to the history of special education in the Philippines. Since we already know or we visited the history of preschool education or early childhood education in the other countries, let's venture on what happened to the history of preschool education in our very own country till the modern time. So, our topic outline for this afternoon includes the Spanish regime of education, the initial attempts of preschool during the American Revolution, and what happened to their interests during after the war. At the same time, what are those breakthrough in the government schools, even for the daycare centers in the Philippines setup, and the modern preschool that we have right now in the Philippines. Our main objectives for this afternoon also is that we can trace the beginning of early childhood education in the world and in the Philippines. We will identify persons who created impact in early education and the contributions they've made. We will also try to identify and discuss challenges for those working in early childhood and describe several helpful support for teachers, especially in facing these challenges. Now, we'll start with the Spanish region. We knew that the Spanish regime had conquered the Philippines 333 years, right? They started grade 1 as their formal of education. So they asked every individual for young learners to have the Christian doctrine. That was their first main goal. And predominantly, religious sectors had used certain books such as Cartilla and the Pahina de la Infancia, or this one contains prayers and booklets for religious individuals. So, since young children are encouraged to read these certain prayers, they're also taught basic alphabets. And if we trace back again in the Spanish regime, they are basically learning how to speak in Spanish. So, young Filipinos, mostly coming from the ilustrados or the or this term had the privilege to go to school, and these individuals also had expanded their education particularly to medicine, literature, arts, and even advance in politics. So since young children are encouraged to go to school, but still there was discrimination because boys are given much attention and the elite one are given much privilege, especially when they go to these schools. Preschool then was unorganized because only selection of young children are allowed to go to school. But then more educated adults emerge in the community and they become some preschool teachers. Usually they have 30-minute session since little kids they have short attention span, and there are also um, unsafe measures that happens during this time, because if you trace back history, Spanish regime, there's limited resources available for education. At the same time, they also have a strict measures. Another thing that happened for during this Spanish regime is that regular schooling in the cartilla, or what we know as those little schools that they have, only lasted for 3 to 6 months, depending on the child's capacity and depending also to the availability of the teachers who will be under them. This school system that they have will give an entry point to the child to join the grade 1 level. Although this may not be the necessary requirement, but then it was somehow it gives advantages if children were taught in the cartilla. So little kids somehow imagine they're so cute, maybe reading some lessons, the letters, and even pronunciation of these Castilla term. We also advanced in some initial attempts. So in 1924, little by little education had pioneered its own preschool. So it started with the Harris Memorial School in Manila, where they opened kindergarten. And as you can see, this one is a private institution. So under this one, the famous Miss Mary A. Evans, basically one of the Americans, had started the initiation of preschool. Little by little, the class was also established by Mrs. Brigida Fernando after her training in Columbia University Teachers College and brought what she learned to the sectors in preschool department. There were a lot of interest in kindergarten. Movement was slowly picking up, but this was more on the private institution. Who among you here are from private preschool?
Public ako, miss.
Ako sad, miss.
Okay, so most of us had to undergo preschool, right? So geographically, the education in the Philippine setting had a significant factor both in the economy of the Philippines at the same time the religious sector also. And in this era, if you can even check on stories, literature, it really played a pivotal role in inculcating Filipino values for young children such as social justice. Children can see and understand what are those participatory of democracy, of self-reliance, whenever teachers would show to them stories and even the ruling of the Spanish era. Furthermore, education was viewed as critical in the social mobility of these individuals. So there was a progress in public sector to attach this one to more normal setting in their campuses. So little by little, they have attempt from private institutions, they go to the public institutions. And more people are also encouraged to join in the said civic welfare of the young individual because they've seen that it had a great impact, especially for the young children. Now in 1935, the National Federal of Women's Club also created or initiated some public school institution, but this time around they called it the nursery education. So from ages 3 to 5 or 6 years old in preparation for their formal primary school. So it is sometimes known as nursery class, daycare, or kindergarten schooling, or early childhood education. So it operates in a certain framework that includes certain structures also, and the class size matters. So they are becoming involved, initiated, or somehow little by little, nursery schools or nursery education was created but not recognized formally. Now, what happened during the World War II? So, in 1940, the Bureau of Private Schools had organized. See, it grew from just small class size in Cartilia. They already had 129 kindergarten classes, and they had also a good number of enrollments, which is 6,449. So the history in the early childhood in the Philippines started really from tutorial basis, from homeschooling basis, until what they have right now in 1940s. So furthermore, other colleges, other universities also attempt to emphasize in kindergarten teaching to give special trainings to the young children. So for young kids, in the country, they remain to be associated for the Bureau of Private Institutions, especially for the religious group. Diba? As you can see, usually ang mga naay preschool kay kanang mga naay madre or mga religious sectors or mga congregation. Kabantay mo, guys?
Yes, miss.
Mm.
Mga Montessori sad, miss.
Yes, they are with the religious groups or basically these intensifies the government's movement because they provided that if children are with the sisters, with the congregations, values are inculcated, values are well taught for the children. Now, there were also a lot of interests that had created. So, post war interests that they had. So, this year immediately ensued some liberation in demonstrating the interest of preschool education. And out of 129 government institution, kindergarten had now evolved to 61 schools with, look at their number of kids. So little by little, it increases. Some also had the privilege to go to both private and public institution. So private individuals had shortly joined this bold start, and even Tondo, Maynila, other places also had joined efforts to make preschool education a more dynamic, realistic, and competitive institution, both global and at the same time international. So if we look back to the years, people are trying their best to have a reform and the made action that they have. So this time in 1948, this is still in the English, or we have the American culture. Harris Memorial School had initiated a big step. So they created junior teacher certificate to graduate in kindergarten education. So there was already formal schooling for those who would be preschool teachers. And with this evolution, worthwhile living had really evolved for the preschool education in the Philippines. First, there were schools such as recognized in doing home economics. So since some universities already allow them to become teachers and have this major in English, major in mathematics, major in science, they also have special trainings in BS education and home economics. More or less, this emphasizes on better preschool education in our country. The preschool education in the country has almost remained to be the bureau of private schools. Even you can see this time, right? There are more on the religious sectors. But then there's still continuation of the pursuant to really involve in the government sectors. So in 1950, they had promulgated this one in the help of Miss Dr. Miguelia M. Solis, so the superintendent teacher for the Education and Bureau of Public Schools. So what they had is they start to train the public school in a regional sector. First one to take advantage was the Pangasinan Normal School. So we'll just mention these individuals. So we also have the Zamboanga Normal School and the National Coordinating Center of the Study and Development of Filipino Children Youth also created the Children's Village, where they allowed kindergarten to join in this program and to really be educated even if in the tutorial basis or homeschooling period that they had. Now with their joint efforts, the growth of Philippine education had really been so slow because we don't have proper budgeting, we don't have really experts, or we might not have those people who are really passionate and have understood the value of educating early childhood or the young children. Though it may be slow, but regularly, yearly, it had increment in kindergarten. So slowly but surely happened, and it boost. So with their efforts, education had reached within hands for people, even to those who cannot afford for educational system. So they had their own strategy, like the major portion of preschool children, they may go to the private institution, and some children can even go to the daycare center. So sending preschool age to private kindergarten is really expensive, right? Even until now. So if, for example, you have a child and if you just want them to just play, just learn some concepts, some of the parents will just opt to send them to daycare centers because they are for free from the government sectors that we have. And every barangay, they have daycare centers. That's actually a must. Even if you will not finish in the bachelor's of general education, and if you are confident, you can actually teach in the daycare centers, provided that you will just enjoy like 5,000 to 8,000 pesos as their salary. Or it's not really a salary, it's like from the government's love gift. And only that, you will not enjoy the SSS, GSIS, or the other incentives if you'll be a preschool teacher that is licensed and at the same time capable to teach in the private institutions or maybe in the public institutions. So, you girls, even if you're just three souls for now, continue and pursue to become an early childhood education because it's really promising. Just for this time, my friend in Singapore is actually looking for preschool teachers to join her in her team. So they're actually looking for Filipino teachers, while my friend who is working in Vietnam is looking for five English teachers to join them in the workforce as well. So, pagdali mo eskwela guys. So sending preschool was expensive, but then we have daycare centers. So the need for nursery schools was catered for somehow for low income families. And several civic welfare also responded in helping out extending those appropriate education. For example, Louvillier. Louvillier is actually a rich individual in the Philippines with so much companies that they have. So what they do is, in order for the government not to incur such large amount of taxes from them, they would create foundations. So that tax that they have, they would rather give it to their foundation. So they would have some they would build some preschool centers. They would look for college students to be their scholars, or they would look for a microfinancing for their little businesses. Instead of the tax given to the government, they will just give it in their foundation. So that's actually their strategy or their technique. Now, another facets that happened in the progress of the history of preschool education, it expanded to 251 classes, and mostly in the Tondo, Manila, where Catriona Gray supported and worked during her time in civic welfare because there's so many children there now, I guess. So, since it was given the chance to make change in the world that we are living, there was an encouragement also sent to the parents to send their children to school so that they will have a lifelong task. At the same time, advocacy would campaign for the 5 to 6 years old. So, they created some play centers. They also had some linkages in the countries such as Europe and USA to have a modern and scientific preschool. Since maybe they are already exposed to the Maria Montessori approach, or maybe Waldorf approach, or the maybe the Reggio Emilia or the art approach. So the preschool environment in the Philippines also are welcoming with those play centers. They are also embracing the enrollment for a fun way in educating young children. So if it happens that you are actually on the social work, you will also be working in the daycare centers. So these people really had to emerge from the expensive one, from the reforms that they have, to what we are experiencing right now. So, meanwhile, civic groups had similar programs. Other institutions, private sectors really supported these preschool institutions. We also have another set of people. So, the Young Ladies Association of Charity, Rural Improvement Clubs, the Philippine Women's Medical Association, also started to embrace these things, and the Department of Social Welfare also instructed that there should be inclusion, meaning even if they are special children, even if they have certain disabilities, they are still welcome in nursery and kindergarten educational program. And in 1970s to 1980s, the government really intensified and they created this public decree of 603. This is actually during the regime of Marcos this time. So what they had is the Child and the Youth Welfare Code. So slowly they rise from the principles of UNESCO or the United Nations Education Scientific Cultural Organization, making sure that the children will have certain privilege because they have the rights of young children. Remember that one, that every child has rights. And until this time, the decade of Filipino child had marked an increase for both these establishment in private and even in public sectors. So as you can see, a lot of development really happened in our from Bureau of Education. Now it happened to be called the Department of Education, Culture and Sports, and now we have DepEd. There's actually a transition of the name and the decree order that they have since it was recognized with roughly registered private schools and institution. So that's it. The local government really had a lot of reform, no, because in our educational system, kung kinsay naa dinha sa ato ang Department of Education, they really explore in certain things. They would adapt those new learnings they have from the Western culture. Ang luoy lang kay ang mga children, sometimes we don't have consistency even right now. What is your take regarding children doing the module, committing suicide? I want to hear from you guys. Have you seen young children in the news this time who are committing suicide because of what they've seen on their modules?
Kaayo, miss.
Yes, what is your
Luoy
take,
kaayo.
Micah? I will ask Micah and then Jel will follow and Femel will be the third one. Okay, Micah, what is your take regarding seeing these modules, seeing this strategy that our Department of Education is doing? Yes, Micah.
Well, sa ako lang nga part, miss, wa man jud ta kaybaw sa tinuod jud nga kanang nahitabo miss sa daghan man sag factors ana. I'm sure dili lang kay to ang module ra nakapa-trigger marag ni samot lang guro miss. Especially sa ato ang kuan karon nga ingon ani ang kanang situation miss ba. Daghan jud to og factors nga nakapa-trigger marag ang module lang miss marag ni dagdag lang siya ba. Especially sa kuan nato ron. Then sa ingon ana miss, as a kuan sad ay wala pa man sad nun ko nakadungog miss nga kanang kuan kanang sa preschool miss ba, pero sa madaghan miss na ako'y daghan nga nadunggan about suicide sa mga kuan miss mga high school mga teens. And I think miss sa kanang na ako'y nabasahan atong article miss nga dili ra man sa kay daw sa module miss, apil naman ang status niya sa iyang family miss ba. Then wala na sad siya nakasabot sa kanang iyahang murag wala na niya nahatagan og kanang kuan ba kanang si pananay wala na niya nahatagan og kanang murag para niya mismo magdabaliwala na niya ang iyahang pagkuan pag-eskwela niya mo to murag napuno na gani siya mo to naka-decide siya og kanang ingon ato. So kanang ang iyahasang sa iya saguro tong self miss ingon ana.
Thank you, Micah, for sharing. True, no? That we can really see news this time. A lot of things going on. How about you, Jel? What is your take, or what is your insight?
Um, luoy, maluoy ko sa mga bata, miss, kay kanang module ra ilang gamit gani na kanang I hope na kanang naa gani laing way na ibuhat ang government kay for example, miss, pareha ng math nga subject. kailangan mong gud na siya og explanation miss ba niya ang bata kay sa module ra magsalig. And then murag ka ng dili lang kay kukuan sa module. Ayaw pa nga ang government mangitag way na murag pareha sa ato ba maka kuan jud makastorya inana maka-explain Artemis.
Thank you, Jal, for that. It's true, no? I'm also hopeful if the government can really do something or hopefully mawala na jud ni si COVID, no? Because true, the parents are also having difficulty if they don't know the lesson. How about you, Fremel?
Kuan mi same sad kang Jel ug kang Mika miss lisod jud kayo o para sa samot na sa mga bata ron ang module niya. Naa man ko'y silbi murag ga-tutor ko miss ba pero dili gud ka na motudlo lang ko. Maluoy jud ko niya miss kay mo na siya ati ngano yung ani man ni ati di lagi ko kasabot niya. Ako kay di pa biya ko maestra maglisod pud kay kog kanang explain bitaw nila miss niya hasta yung mama kay magpatabang na lang pud nako. Kaning anak miss ba kanang di jud maayo ang para nako kaning anak ron need jud sa mga bata ang guide sa teachers ni ano miss ba. Mas maayo jud tong face to face kaysa sa module. Labi na ang module ron di hasta ako miss di ko kasabot kanang magtudlo ko sa answer kay murag wa ang answer, murag sayop ang answer. Sa
Thank you.
awareness bitaw sa kanang mental health miss. As, wala to miss, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Fremel. So it's true, no? Sabot na that the grades 1, 2, and 3 are having Cebuano as their medium of instruction if you happen to check the module this time. So it's also true that neighbors are asking for help, especially if they would know nga education ka or magkuha kag maestra, murag ikaw jud ang madangpan nila. And thank you, Fremel, for being a good help somehow in little way that you can. Okay, so let's continue this time. So in knowing that our educational system really had flourished from a simple aspiration of private sectors, now public schools are given also privilege. So until present, 2000 until present, education for all has been the battle cry for our educational system. And we also have different presidential decree, mga laws, mga Department of Education order for the Commission on Higher Education. And at the same time, different rules or laws are being used on different local government code. So this was actually my messy classroom before with my students. We play a lot, we navigate, and we really ventured a lot in my different corners, different centers with my students. So I have different mixture of students of different race. I've been a preschool teacher for 7 or 8 years, and you cannot really identify which of the children are special kids, right? Because they just camouflage. So this is my classroom together with the other teachers who are helping me out also if I need some extra hand if we have a lot of activities. So if you can happen to check, these are 2 or 3 years old. So we place their names, the beginning letters of their names, at the same time, the faces that they have whenever they would form some lines. And we actually have some mirror to also check if they can identify their body parts and see their reflection. So, awareness of themselves. And look at their arts, it's basically abstract. They just color any way they wanted, and these are actually little souls that we have in my classroom. And every time that we are in the playground, my kids are really playful, they have so much energy. And right now, maybe these children, they are already, I think, grade 4. They're already grade 4. So, mga big na ni sila na mga kids. Every week, what we usually do is that we have a thematic approach. For example, this week, we will be learning about the color red. So, everyone will be requiring to do some activities that would pertain to red, or if this day is sports day or PE day, we also ask them to wear something sporty. So we don't have uniform in our school. They just come their own civil attire. At the same time, sometimes they would come in their pajamas. Murag pick up ra siguro from bed. Chuk, ano, sent to school to us. So they still do have their milk bottle. We have nap time. And one time I can remember when I had a story about Miss Red because we were learning about color red, and they really didn't recognize that it was me under that red things bringing red bag, and inside that red bag there were red surprises as well, until I have that one
Nice, miss.
boy. I have this one boy, the one in orange. I usually have a morning stroke to him, or kanang we have a own signal ba. Murag dito siya nagwonder, I think this is teacher net. Murag naka-think siya ba nga, is Miss Red, si Miss Net niya. After that, nga nag-change na ko, they were so eager telling to me, oh, you Miss Red, she was here. But they did not know that it was just me. So murag children, but they can be, you can really trick them. But that lesson really, um, it really impacted to them that they cannot forget the color red. Even until now, parents would, we actually send them anecdotes, so parents would recall, teacher, we can still remember your video, your picture regarding Miss Red. You know, the kids really remember it. Murag may highlights ilang pagka preschool to Miss Red. Or sometimes we have yellow or green, so we are just playful. So if it's yellow, also children would come yellow just to reinforce the color yellow. So we are playful, kumbaga. So in here, that's a little K, and they're actually big this time. So as you can see on the table, there are also names in their pictures. And we color the beginning letter or the capital letter E, or the first letter of their name, so that they would know that that's his letter. So when I teach alphabets, I don't start with letter A, B, C, D. I start with a letter with the letters that are the beginning of their names. For example, first letter would be letter E because that's Ethan's letter. Tomorrow's letter would be letter DH because it's Donkey's letter. So with those letters, we explore examples of the beginning of the things, animals that begins with letter E. So little by little, all the letters would be accomplished. But there is this sense of ownership. Oh, letter E is my letter. Or letter K is my letter. Oh, letter N, that's teacher net. So they also have that understanding that letters, they are symbols and they represent the person. So there's connectivity ba. Now we also do a lot of costume party. So this is me when I was in kindergarten class. Our literature are very rich. We post a lot of their outputs on the walls, on their bookshelves, or even in their cabinets. Then we don't really enforce if students are passive learners. For example, they don't listen to us during story time since they are really playful. We just allow them to let them be on the things that they are busy with. And we make sure that other kids are also safe in their adventure. So as you can see, this little girl is holding a little puppet because she always cry, and we always remind her that look at your picture, she's smiling. Oh, she will also remember, or sometimes remind herself to smile because her picture is smiling. So ikaw rin jud mag-atik-atik sa mga little kids, you know them. So I had to really pacify them and allow them to explore. We also have some sandbox time. So this is good for their fine motor skills. Sometimes, playful as they are, they can just throw the sand and then their classmates would cry because it already went to their eyes, to their face, to their clothes. But that happens only if you don't put some rules. So you really need to remind them. You really need to tell them. See, it's still 2014. So it's really fun to work with young children. At the same time, you really have to be creative as a teacher. So these were my co-teachers before. So with 10 kids, we are three teachers in that classroom setting that we have. So we also have another visitor. So time to time, I just come in wearing costumes and some weird stuffs that children would really enjoy listening, enjoyed playing with. So
Cute kay Miss. Mura kag na instant cosplayer.
so I really had a lot of costume and some pictures also, but I cannot retrieve it na because it was in the old computer. So what I only have are those pictures from the Facebook. That's why they are pixelated. So my kids really loves whenever I came in costume or teachers would really pretend that they are somebody else or characters. Then we also encourage them to do some role play or pretend play. So in pretend play, they are really playful. At the same time, they can be very active. And then you can really elicit, see their conversations, their imagination. Even these children right now are actually big kids na sad sila, and I already added them on Facebook. Sometimes they would not remember me as their preschool teacher, but it's okay. Whenever they see, whenever I send them pictures, oh, that's me when I was a baby. I was so cute. O mga wala pa jud may buot anigang. So sometimes I would get some surprises from them since some of them already returned to their country. They're actually expats. So those foreigners who are building some companies here before, their company would send them to the Philippines, give them free education, free financing, housing, and all. And then they would choose their own schools. But then they also need to go back to their own country to do some progress on another project. So I do explore, allow them to expose on painting. There was an instance that my child really colored her body color green. Yeah, imagine, naapil ang mga sanina na color green and you have to explain to the parents what happened. Good thing my parents are just supportive. Mana sila, ay, okay na ma'am, okay na teacher. So we have some smocks so that they will not paint their bodies or they would not color their um, arms. So this is like the playground that we have. So kids really enjoyed their time. So it's actually like a small school, but then it has a huge impact because there are mixed culture. So it's really a private school. Even the classroom setup is not really a classroom setup, as you can see. It's just like a room where they can explore, be themselves, play together with other kids for socialization, and learn some concepts. Now, you actually have three outputs that are expected from you for the entire midterm. So that is until October 30. So first, you will be creating your own philosophy as a preschool teacher. There are actually a lot that you can check online, but I want you to just get an idea from them, from those submissions of teaching philosophy, but create your own that you will be using as a preschool teacher. And then you can write your answers on an MS Word or maybe it's a Canva. Next is let's look for those sites or online apps where we can really learn or teach concepts in math and English for preschool. What are those things? Any questions so far with this galvanized project?
None so far, Miss.
None so far.
Wala
Okay.
ra, miss.
Wala ra? Okay. So let me check for my next discussion. Okay, my next topic is about the roles of preschool teachers. To start with, we will be venturing what does a young child need? What is our role as a preschool teacher? What are those essential lessons that we have? And do we have some hints? What if the child is special? What if the child is in the borderline of identification for ADHD? What are those red flags that we can see? Are there early childhood programs? And what can be the resources that we can use to become a better preschool teachers? So, let's begin. What does a young child need? So, a child needs everything in our classroom. They need physical assistance, such as food, clothing, cleanliness, shelter, safety, protection, and play. So, it depends to what school you will be working with. Will it be in the private institution or the public schools? So, physical needs, we really need to provide them with food. So, that is why there is snack time. For snack time, it depends also if it's the teacher will prepare or the students will be the one to bring the baon. In our scenario in school, children will prepare their own snacks. So we buy the ingredients and then they will make their own pancakes, they create their own salads, they cut their mini apples. So we have those things in my classroom. Next, for cleanliness, we have short sink, or the measurement of the sink would be the height would be the same height with them so that they can really wash their hands. Shelter also is very important to the security of the child and protection also, and play, a lot of playtime. So for you guys, I'm actually excited for you how you'll be able to become a preschool teacher and play with your students later on. You know, preschools really need to have sense of security. That is why we cannot do away for young children who would hug us, who would kiss us, or give high five, or if they would smell you, or if they would tell you, "I really like you," or sometimes they would tell you, "I hate you." So, nadyo ni mga inana, no, labi na imong buyagon, and then the following minutes, okay na dayon sila. Okay na dayon ang mga children. So, with young children, they are really innocent compared to adults like 1 month, 1 year, dili mo tingog, no? But for young kids, they really have that sense of innocence. Next, social needs. So, you need to interact with them either with the caregiver, with the yayas. It's very important, guys, because, you know, in the Philippines, mostly in the Philippines, it is the yaya who are the prime givers, caregivers of these love, of this support to the young children, because we have working families, working parents, working individuals who may not have time to the little kids. So give also appropriate opportunity for them to play and to be with others. So play is very important. So young kids also needs these things. So as with young adults like you, psychological needs. So the child would know, it's important that the child will know that the teacher likes them, the teacher loves them. It's important that the child knows that the teacher knows his name or even the name of the dog. So imo jud na siyang i-memorize. So in our school year, our academic school year actually starts by July. So we visit the child's home by May. So that's actually an exposure so that they would know, oh, I already saw you. You visited our house before. So with that, we actually have some interview, or we do have some play. So that is called house visit. So we go to their houses, or sometimes i-pick up me sa ilahang driver and we go to their house, and then ma-play lang, just exposure to the child before they would meet you in the school. In public school, they also have that one. They do house visits, and they would see the environment of the child, who are those guardians, who are those people who are surrounding the child itself. So it's also important that we know the drivers, the yaya, the grandma from our interview list, because especially no if matangtak mataktak ang driver niya basin lain ang mo pick up sa child nya ikaw rin makabayad sa child nga nawala or what if na-kidnap sa yaya or gidagit sa iyang daddy nga nagbulag na sa iyang mommy sa mga anak na mga issues. So develop also a positive self-esteem. So it's very good that teachers are loving, teachers are not known to be kanang mangusnit, naaman jud no sa preschool or kanang kusog kaayo mga saba or favoritism. We cannot get away with that. So cognitive needs. So it's very important that we read the child's stories, we read them concepts, and really help them to know these things. So basic language. So in my classroom before, 2 years old, 3 years old, they cannot speak yet. So you imagine 1 to 2 months maghilak ba na sila kanang inikab drop sa ilang mommy kana bye mommy maghilak tayo well as in grabe jud kaayog hilaka ang mga child but then later on they would develop nga it's okay mommies will just come back mommies will just be there for me waiting teacher is fine teacher is good teacher is loving ila jud na imo jud na ipa-feel sa ilaha so grabe jud mura jud kag kanang mommy slash yaya slash unsa pa din nga role. Okay, sometimes since I have exposed myself from babies from 2 years old, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So tanan ng mga age na balhin-balhin ko each year. So it's a good thing also. So naka-experience ko kanang ako'y magpailo sa mga children if malibang sila or if they need help from um, toiletries, toilet training. So I also experienced that one. It's a good thing because it's actually a plus whenever you apply for work abroad. They would even ask you scenarios. How are you going to handle these situations if like this and like that? And I'm so happy that I was exposed to those things. But now, play is very important when you are with your students. Even if you are just an ate or a cousin, if you have young children there, play is very important. Now, how can we be a significant individual into the child's needs? Number one, we provide all the love, care, nourishment, the nurturing love to our children. We want also tell them that this place is safe, healthy, and secure. You know, if I can remember, 7 years ago, October 15, 2013, it was the day when we don't have class because I think it was Ramadan or there was a Muslim celebration. I remember that I was about to go out from the house but then it was around 7 or 8 a.m. Suddenly ni sayaw-sayaw ang balay niya abi na kog na ay mga iring sa taas nangatagak ang akong mirror all my pampagwapa and then everyone in that um compound gipagawas mi panggawas mo kay naglinog like naglinog and then when I check on Facebook the people in Bohol katong mga churches in Bohol the rebels of Bohol they had a bad hit in the earthquake right you remember that one guys where
Yes,
were you
miss.
Yes, miss.
where were you during that
7
time
point.
Sa
yes
balay
seven
ra miss kay holiday man to.
yeah something like that
Yes, miss. Timing kaayo.
it was
Manggay
holiday.
holiday.
True, it was really holiday. And I was so thankful because I cannot imagine if I was with my toddlers, if I was with my classroom, I cannot imagine kay ngano natumbahan og kahoy ang among classroom. And I cannot really imagine yun if that incident happened ba asa ka po nito na kong mga little kids asa kinsay mo carry namo ba so I was really thankful at the same time na sad po ta because of what happened in Bohol and with that one wala mi gipaskwela wala to'y klase because of the mga aftershocks ba and even right now some establishments in Bohol are slowly immersing from the rubbles from those kanang mga naguba na ng mga buildings and as you can see teachers also needs to be quick teachers needs to secure the safety of the child and even right now wala may preschool nga open this time because we really need to secure them especially from the viruses and from the COVID Next, we engage the child in play, conversation, singing activities. At the same time, we provide them with the activities that really expand their teaching and learning. Now, who among you here are singers? Baka ng preschool teacher man mo, di ka mao jud mo kanta.
Bahay kubo ra, miss.
Wait
So,
those Chinese.
you really have to practice, memorize some simple songs, even if like you have, for example, the famous, the farmer in the dell, the farmer in the dell, hi ho the deli yo, the farmer in the dell. Yeah, you would allow the child to explore. If your name is Fermel, if your name is Fermel, wave, wave, wave your hand if your name is Fermel. So you just play along with tone, you play with the melody, you invent songs. So dapat no creative kita if you'd be preschool teacher. Next one, don't you know that preschool teachers gives a lasting impact to young children, especially when they
Yes,
learn
miss.
language, if they learn kanang wrong diction, na kita dyan mas makasalaan ni if we teach them and expose them to kanang not correct words, but if we really love them, if we seed goodness and kindness, the product and the things that you will saw will be beyond measures. Just like me, I was just being myself when I was a preschool teacher, but now I am reaping the saw. I am reaping what I planted. I just get some surprises. I even got help from during this time during the lockdown. Parents would message me, teach, can I send you something something? Teach, can I offer you this one? So murag wala ko nag-ask og help, but they themselves offered pa. Teach, um Casey remembered you and she is sending you this one. So murag, your lessons and the life that you invested to them, it will just return to you 100-fold. Like also, we teach them in concepts of loving their family. We teach them lessons that they can relate as well. Now, what are those virtues that we really need to give to our students? Number one, trust. So trust is very important. Oh, I will ask first um Framel this time to read. Okay, I want to hear your voice, Framel. Go.
Kanitanan, miss.
Yes.
Trust, the infant knows his or her needs will be met. It is vital to babies under 1 year to develop a sense of trust, knowing the caregiver will meet their needs. Trust is born from having the baby's needs met by a consistent caregiver.
So true. So trust is the one important value that we really need to have in the lives of our children. So the child, the more that the child will be able to give the trust, the easier it would be in the transaction or in the teaching learning process. Next is we have gel.
Independence. The young child explores and learns what he or she can do. The caregiver provides a safe environment with supervision and encouragement for the child to explore. Exercise their will and learn self control. Desires to test independence. Walking is a step toward independence.
So walking is step towards independence. So it's very true that we really need to give the caregivers just like us or the teachers to provide safe independence for our children. So that is why na mga safe zones, so na mga padded classrooms, butangan na nilag mga padded area, ang mga sockets, butangan na nilag cover para in case no, basig na ipang tusok-tusok dila ang mga child, dili sila ma electrocuted, and teach them also to have choices in their lives or in like in the activities. Like for example, Fremel, do you want to color or do you want to paint or you want to play with the blocks? So butangan hatagan jud nimo sila choices. Choices also limits to one or two choices or kana duha lang ka choices, not so many choices kay ma-overwhelm sila. Okay. Next one, Micah.
Initiative. Young child takes action when he or she feels capable and confident to do new things. Preschoolers begin to imagine, learn skills through play, increase in ability to follow directions, gain new skills, feel capable to learn.
So true. So children can really have their own initiative. Initiative in the sense of they can really climb, they can surprise you with their own kanang mga stinuryahan, ilang mga answers, di ba? Did you experience that one, guys? Murag ma-surprise na lang ka, ha? Asa man ni siya gikan ani nga kung ano reasoning or rationalization. Now, we also have some teacher hints. For example, we should talk to the baby or we need to talk to the preschool every day in our classroom. So, mo make time did ka makatalk ka or maka-say hi ka sa individual. Next one is to read books daily. Did I share to you that we have this 1,000 page book club where we collect 10 books and then they would exchange every week. Then mommies would record, okay, example, Jel was able to read 15 pages today. Then tomorrow again. Story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, 35 pages. But it doesn't mean that child ang ni-read. Or it can be like, together sila ni-read ba? So, expose ang child sa reading until he will have that virtue of reading. So, I actually tried this one in the college during my developmental reading class. Nag-exchange sila books and every now and then, they would share the summary and the insights that they have, and it's really helpful. Now, what if your students are having special needs? So, what are those red flags? So, for example, this refers to the indication if the child is not developing in a normal way or in a certain way, and these behaviors may also arise in your big concern. So, you should be consistent. So, some children are actually early bloomers, like they would really talk so much, they're confident, but there are also individuals who are delayed in some areas. And what are you going to check first? If you happen to see that infants are not gaining weight, so gamay jud kayo siya sa iyahang age, so you should be very careful. Next one, if babies are not able to make eye contact, like they cannot follow your mobiles, they cannot follow your items, your colors. Maybe they are colorblind or they are experiencing autism because they cannot focus. They cannot follow kanang heads up. They cannot hold something with their hands, no response to sounds, dili mo smile, dili mo hilak, or dili jud sila mo give og response. Be very careful. Failure to show anticipatory behavior or feeding, for example, imong hagwaon, wala jud emotion ang child. So, careful jud ka ana. Next is the lack of interest. Even if you give them some social stimuli, kanang gitikon ang child, wa gihapon and not able to grasp or reach for objects. And even if you tickle the muscles, no response of the child. Next one is that infants may not be able to still gain weight. They cannot even say the single word as mama or even ku. They don't look to the teachers. They don't look to the caregivers. So why am I including this one as caregivers? Because some of the preschool teachers, especially if you work abroad, you can be working in a hospital or you can be working in daycare centers where they will just send their babies. Even if gagmay pa kay nga babies, they would send it to their daycare centers. Next one, if the child during this um, timeline, 9 to 12 months, they're not able to stand up. They're supposed to little by little stand up already. No gestures for waving or even shaking the heads. or they cannot drag themselves, and they don't search the hidden objects. Next one. This one is roughly for 2 years old. Still not able to talk, even simple gestures, not able to have some body rocking or movement, and may have retarded or inconsistent in their development. For 3 years old, so they can be in our school already. They frequently fall. Kanang mga may nung tao, lampayatot maning mataawi. Sige man kadagma. They have drooling, or they even have some unclear speech. For example, um, they stammer or they stutter, or like if they would call you teacher, they'll call you tickle, tickle. So something like that. So usually it's also different for the letter R for Koreans or some Japanese. They are not exposed to it. Next is inability to build tower. They would rather line it up or mag ilang i-surround sa ilang self rather na i-build. So dapat ang normal nga child, they would build the tower. Ang autistic na child, they would line up the tower like murag train. Next one, difficulty to manipulate small objects or mga little things. Ma-impatient sila or ilang ipanglabay. Next, inability to create three-word sentences like, give me water, I will eat, open please, something like that. Next is they don't have involvement in the pretend play or masuko sila. Like, for example, hatagan mo sila box niya, himuon mo og ka ng hat, or like you would pretend it's something else like for cooking. Mo na sila, no, that's not a hat. So wala sila creativity. Next one is they don't like to play with other children. So be careful with these forms of red flags. For 4 years old, they don't know how to throw a ball, like overhand for throw. They cannot even jump. They cannot hold a crayon properly. They have difficulty in scribbling, no sense in interaction or other games. They don't like to play with other kids. Next, so these kids might have autism where they don't have eye contact, they don't have socialization. Next, they also don't like if kanang nabitay tag. Who among you doesn't like to have tag in their clothes? So some kids, they experience this one. Saputon sila or it's itchy for them. They also don't have sentences. They don't have proper sentences. They cannot even copy simple circles, simple images, and they don't have control of anger. Next one, for 5 years old, so these are basically for nursery or kindergarten. They are sometimes very shy. Kanang di gyud mo tingog maski imong tawgon or imong patingogon di sa jud siya. Or it's other way around. They are aggressive, manukmag, mamaak, or siguro manglabay sa mga ballpen nimo or mga paper, gisiun. They are distracted. They cannot easily stay in 5 minutes. They show interest in playing with other kids. They are very unhappy. Dali kayo sad or, you're hurting my feelings. Yeah, ato dayon sa kilid, magkilakilak. So they have emotional problems. They may also seem to be passive, no reaction. Murag, ni paki bata or iniglakaw niya kay matumba niya yung classmate, wala siya ipaki. O di siya makasense nga nakaaway na day siya or nakahapak na siya or maybe he wants to play but then iyang form of play ika nang kiat kaayo niya ang receiver maingon na teacher is hurting me, yeah, but the child wants to play. There are also tendency if they cannot talk about the daily activities like what did you do or what did you eat today, makalimot ra siya. Having trouble also to take off and on with the clothes like buttoning, taking those t-shirts, cannot wash their hands or kanang inig wash the hands kay iwilik-wilik dayon. So what are we going to do with these red flags? So make sure that as a preschool teacher you note it, you observe, you jot it down, and have the young child be evaluated by pediatrician or those child developmental pedia so that they'll be the one to assess if the child has special needs. Obtain also help from the parents so that we will see if they really need help. And where can we make sure that our children are safe? First, we we have qualified preschool and care centers just like you, preschool providers that needs to help every child. We also have number and ages of children who are allowed in a good child care practice. So if you see a preschool, nya, example, preschool teacher ka, nya, 30 kabuk children, that's actually a no-no. A kindergarten teacher must only have 10 to 15 kids, one teacher. Or sometimes, duha na siya ka-teacher. Then if it's 20 to 25, dapat two or three teachers na siya naadi na. So mo na head teacher or night teacher assist in your classroom. Or sometimes you have shadow teachers around you. You're the head teacher, yan nasa mo assist nimo. Next, area is clean and safe. So this is our role. We really need to make it safe for every individual. Next one is food are nutritious. That is why we encourage a lot of vegetables or sometimes fruits. Equipment should be appropriate for them. Toys and activities are appropriate for the child, and there should be a routine that you will establish. We can go over with those things. Now, we actually have some examples here, but in the Philippines, we also have our own. It differs from, for example, for preschool that I have, I only have 2 hours with them. Then for other classes for kindergarten, they may have 3 hours. So we will talk about that in the coming days. We also have some help that we can do for assessing special kids like speech therapy. We can also have developmental milestone pedia to check whether they are experiencing some learning difficulties or learning disabilities. Next one is emphasis on school readiness. So if the child is crying over now and then whenever she is in school, so sometimes they have this separation anxiety if too close kayo sila, especially if mothers ang nag-take care for long span of time and then it's the first time to go to school, it's really challenging, guys. Literacy development. So you expose your child with a lot of printed materials in your classroom. Field trips also. In preschool, field trips are together with parents. Dili pwede nga ikaw ra together with the children. Field trips with parents alongside with them. We also provide some home visits. We also provide certain activities such as helping them to really involve in parenting classes. So in our school, we have a seminar for the yayas at the beginning of the school year. We have seminars for the drivers. We have seminars for the parents. We even have seminars for the lola and the lola just to educate them as well on what are those things that they can do together with their students or children. Now in the car also, we have this certain reminder that 1 year old must be already sitting in a little car seat. So their car seat should be harnessed enough, especially when they are in the cars. So there are some points. Now, just for this one, can you remember your most unforgettable experience in the classroom as a teacher or even as a observer or as a student? Do you have one? Okay, guys. Asa naman ni sila? Yes, you have a question. What is your question? Sorry, I was not able to check this. Yes, what is your question, Micah?
Ay okay na miss, natubag na na nimo miss.
Natubag na?
About katong oh miss.
Oh,
Katong mauasta ko miss ba pila ang makater sa kuan usa ka preschool teacher jud dapat.
mm,
Kay ari kay mostly magud diri ako makit-an kay 25 niya. Imposible kay miss ba? Kay
true.
daghan kaayo.
That's very true. That is why it's very helpful that we really need to make sure, for example, mo dawat ka, yes ma'am, preschool teacher niya, may bulag, hello, 25, abog akong bata na masyakoy na ni. Okay, sometimes principals in other schools, they actually have those hidden agenda.